Okay, well, I'm back in Tbilisi, Georgia, Republic of Georgia, talking to my old friend Nino Evgenidze. Nino is the head of the Economic Policy Research Center here in Tbilisi. She's an old friend of the Center on Democracy, Development, and the Rule of Law at Stanford, and she's been hosting us for a number of Leadership Academy programs. This is number
six.
Yeah, that's amazing over the years. We've got a really great group of a mixture of, they're mostly Georgians, but we have some people from Armenia, 6 Ukrainians, somebody from
Azerbaijan,
Kyrgyz, yeah. Kazakhstan, yeah.
Belarus, Russia, Ukraine all the time.
Yeah. That's really terrific. They're very accomplished people, and they've so far been very enthusiastic participants, so we're really grateful for that. So, Nino, maybe we can just talk a little bit of an update. We did an interview when I was here last in April of 2023. But maybe you can just update on the situation, with the ongoing war in Ukraine and how that's putting pressure on Georgia and some of the things that are happening there now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Frank, having me to this interview, and we are really grateful you two coming every year back to Tbilisi and running this amazing program which really unites the freedom fighters and democracy leaders all around the world. And I think it's crucial time for the world, and every single person who really the fights and they're dedicated to this kind of activity is really means a lot to us, and to bringing these people to Georgia, and also to helping the Georgian civil society, business, academia, and government representatives as well. To keep this fight and keep this fight for the democracy. Yeah.
To provide a little bit of background, this time last year you were just coming off this struggle about this new NGO law that the government had.
The Russian law, yeah.
Yeah, a Russian law that would have allowed the government, the Georgian Dream government here, to shut down a lot of NGO activity, including, very likely your own. Where does that stand now?
You remember that when in March, when they introduced this Russian law, we call it a Russian law because it's all about the kind of, the labeling, the all civil society organizations, not only the NGOs, but the broader civil society as foreign agents who have the different views, so have the different aspiration, despite the government's, the will to bring Georgia closer to Russia, instead of bringing Georgia closer to Europe, with our constitutional, the priority, and it's written to the Georgian constitution. But the good things happened that last year in March, that Georgia as a society proved that we're not gonna allow anyone to take us from our historical path, which is to bring Georgia closer to Euro-Atlantic space, and also to bring Georgia back to the family where we belong, and unfortunately for 200 years Russia's imperialistic occupation, annexation of this country, we were always having the struggle and the fight, and the generations died to fight for freedom and to bring this idea of freedom to us, to the current population of this country. And with support and the pressure of the society, because somewhere more than around 300,000 people went to the streets from all generations, and mainly it was amazing that the young people went to the streets, to defending these values, saying that we are not Russia, and we're gonna fight for these values to the end. Yeah. And which was also one of the factor later when we got the European Union candidate status. They all international society and the West was talking about that we understand that Georgian government do not implement any of this recommendation, which was 12 recommendations to implement by the Georgian government to get closer to the, to get the candidate status. And we wrote about this together with you at Foreign Affairs, and saying that the Georgian government is sabotaging their own country, to get this candidate status.
And this is because of the oligarch
Bidzina Ivanishvili,
that is pro-Russian and is secretly manipulating
who runs
the
this
government.
country. And unfortunately, the situation here is right now we have is a state capture, and all we are waiting for the next upcoming elections in October. And civil society organizations and everybody in this country wants to this kind of the peaceful change, because it's again proves the democratic development of this society, that we're gonna come over with this problem, that which is not only the Georgia's problem, it's a kleptocracy and the oligarchy, which is very, very Russian, like a model of the doing business, and with this kind of the power to get also some other institutions and to get the more wealth, or to be involved in this. And this Russian oligarch, we call it the Russian oligarch Bidzina Ivanishvili, who captured the state, he is trying his best. Unfortunately, all these last 2 years at least, for the broad public and internationally, that they're trying to avoid the sanctions, that the Russians avoiding the sanctions through different countries. And unfortunately,
they're helping the Russians.
Helping the Russians, of course, to avoiding the sanctions. And unfortunately, to Georgia, we were kind of named in several reports, and the international, the investigative, the TV spots that Georgia is used as a country, to supporting the Russians to avoid the sanctions, which is a biggest shame. And additional to this, they were doing everything, during past at least 2 years, and since war started in Ukraine, to open the door to the Russians, to make their stay here.
So how many Russians crossed the border?
From the last year, the statistics, it was kind of 1,200,000 people. But they're not publishing anymore this statistics.
And the total population of Georgia is?
The total population of Georgia is 3,700,000 million people, which is kind of and the last 2 years since the Russians arrived here, the 300,000 Georgians left the country, and there are a lot of the Russians opening their banking accounts, and last year it was more than 70,000 bank accounts in different private banks. And we've heard the stories that the United States sanctioned the judges who were involved in a corruption, but was another case sanctioning the former prosecutor general, who is kind of right hand of the Bidzina Ivanishvili, as a Russian KGB and FSB agent, who is trying everything to destroy the political situation in favor of Russia here in Georgia, and he was also sanctioned on that direction. And we think that all this, the activities and the business wise decisions is making here by the Russian oligarch Bidzina Ivanishvili is underlines again that the fact that current leadership of this country is not in favor to be close to the West, and it's not only our the doubts or assumptions or something like this, because they're doing every single day this very openly, attacking the West, saying that all these donors are trying to undermine the Georgian sovereignty, and they're talking about the United States and the European Union, and I mean it's such a kind of like it goes to the same way as Russia was doing all the time. You know, if you compare all the steps, you can find that it's kind of like a copy paste from the Russia playbook, how the Putin did into Russia, to undermining the all institutions, to blackmailing the civil society organization, and next step, the pressuring the civil society organizations and imprisoning them. We are not yet there, but the situation, how they're like, you know, they're attacking civil society, different civil society organizations, and all this, like, you know, the Western community who are in favor to get Georgia to Europe and the NATO is quite clear to everybody. But
tell me a little bit about the impact of the Ukraine war. So one of the big impacts is all of these Russians leaving Russia and settling in Georgia.
Yeah.
But presumably, if Putin is successful in subduing Ukraine, that's going to have very bad implications for Georgia.
Yeah, it's already had a very bad implication on Georgia, because I hope you heard this, like, you know, the Russia's decisions that they are building the military base in Ochamchire deep sea port, which is part of the Georgian territory, but it's occupied by the Russians. And it's gonna be a disaster. It makes Georgia again the vulnerable and the, you know, the very, very weak in our position. And instead of like, you know, the getting more allies and the partners all around the world in this very critical situation to Georgia, our current government, they were attacking everybody, you know, all around the world who might be our really partners and allies to defend the Georgia, to build the Georgia's resilience, you know, and to provide the like a military or whatever equipment to defend ourselves, because the threat is real, you know, and we still occupy 20% of the Georgian territory. It's still occupied by the Russians. And you know, that all these talks that after the war there is going to be any peaceful negotiations, we always argue our Ukrainians, or like, you know, to recommend them, do not believe the Russia's like talks or any international talks to bring you to the negotiation table and talk about the ceasefire, you know, because they always broke the, like, you know, the agreements. And even after the, like, you know, the ceasefire agreement after 2008 war in Georgia, we've lost like more than 300 villages with a creeping occupation in a so-called peaceful times, you know, and the more people died, kidnapped and killed after this so-called peaceful period since 2008 in 15 years than it was during the war, you know. I mean, it's not that they're gonna end somewhere, you know. And why for all of us, why for Ukrainians, Georgians, and for all Western societies is very important to Russia to lose this war. And to help the Ukrainians to win this war, because I mean, you know, I have this theory. I believe in people, and I believe in nations who really want to like perform better. And I believe that the Russia also, it's going to be some kind of like a game changer in the Russians' mindset, you know, change themselves. And after that, after they will lose this war, it's going to be some kind of chance them to cure from this imperialistic, like, you know, the mindset as well.
But presumably you're very dismayed and worried about the failure of the United States to continue arming Ukraine because of the current deadlock in the U.S. Congress.
It's very depressing seeing all this situation, you know, because that Ukrainians, they're fighting for all of us right now. They are sacrificing their own lives, you know, and they are in a front run, and every single day, even we're sitting right now here, our Ukrainian fellows, they showed me that there is a massive attack on Kyiv right now. And many people are dying there, and it should be stopped, but stopped with providing like a more military or like, you know, the equipments, ammunition to the Ukraine artillery, because they need this, like, you know, the now, not after 2 or 3 years, but they need now to win this war. for us all the time when we were under this totalitarian regime, the United States and the globally united West, for us always was kind of hope, that one day we will be there, and one day all these people is gonna be the solidar to us, because the idea of this Europe all and free at peace idea stands on the solidarity, this transatlantic unity. When we are United States and the Europe, then we can make real changes and the real developments and the better future for everyone. If we're not going to be the democratic country, I don't know. I don't see my kind of identity, who we are as a country then. And until for that values, the people are dying in Ukraine, and until for that values, people are dying in Georgia or elsewhere,
Yeah, and the Georgians are dying in Ukraine also.
Georgians dying in Ukraine as well, because we believe that the war in Ukraine is our war, and we need to get this kind of feelings or spread this kind of feelings in other Western countries as well. They have to realize that the Russians, if we're not going to stop them right now, then they're going to knock at their doors, because everybody knows that next going to be the Baltic countries and the Poland and Moldova or Sweden or Finland. God knows, for them there is no limitation.
Okay, Nino, I think that's a very powerful statement of, your concerns about the present situation. So let's hope that the Ukraine aid gets passed down the road, and that NATO solidarity remains, very strong, and that democracy continues in Georgia.
Yes.
Very good. So I'm talking to Iryna Shyba. She is a Ukrainian who has come to Tbilisi to participate in our Leadership Academy for Development. We've done a number of these in Ukraine itself, but unfortunately, due to the wartime situation, we have not been there since 2019. So Iryna, first of all, tell me, what do you do back in Ukraine, and what are your main, activities at the moment?
At the moment, I'm the deputy head of the EU Anti-Corruption Initiative. It's a big technical assistance project established by European Commission in 2017 to help build anti-corruption infrastructure. We work with key anti-corruption institutions like National Anti-Corruption Bureau that investigates top corruption cases and High Anti-Corruption Court, but we also support civil society and investigative media.
Okay. And it's actually pretty hard to get out of Kyiv these days, right? You have to take a train to Poland and then fly from there down to here. So tell me about the situation in Kyiv. There was just a big Russian missile attack on the city this past week. What is life like there at the moment?
I think that's interesting that the people are the beings that adjust quite quickly. And to be honest, I think at some point you even lose the fear. You're just there and you don't pay as much attention to the alerts as you do, as you used to do in the first days, until one of these rockets hits the house next to you, or until you see these pictures in the Facebook with dead children and the mothers who tried to protect them with their own bodies. And in that moment, you can't keep the emotions anymore. And it's something that takes the whole day away from you. You can't function after sleepless night usually, but also with knowing this news, being in Parakal, seeing young people are dying for no reason, it really distracts you from your life. And different people react differently. I myself, I think that I cope quite well, but I know many people who have still panic attacks, who are afraid every time that missiles are coming in, but they still decide to stay, to be there, to support Ukraine's economy, to support Ukrainian army, and to work on the reforms in Ukraine in the midst of the war.
And there's been a really remarkable effort by civil society to support the government, and is that sense of unity that existed at the beginning of the war still still evident.
Yeah, I think so. And it was actually quite remarkable. This series that always would say that you need to have civil society because they are the first responders, they are so close to community, understanding their needs. I had to see it with my own eyes in practice. As I mentioned, we support many organizations like Anti-Corruption Action Center, Transparency International Ukraine, Investigative Media, and all of them on the 21st of February started to provide volunteer aid. They started to collect humanitarian assistance. They started to advocate internationally. Some of our partners, Daria Kalanyuk, who I think you know personally, she got very famous for asking very hard questions to American and British diplomats and encouraging them to support Ukraine. So all of these people were the first one to come and assist, and it was even the fun story that I've heard that from one of my colleagues who fought on the judicial reform and who were working on the vetting of judges, that he himself on the first days had to cooperate and work together jointly of one of these judges that he wanted to get dismissed from the position because he didn't consider him ethical. Because in a moment like this, when you facing the serious threat that basically threatens your existence, all of this didn't matter, and they got together even with those who they seem as enemies before, just to make sure that Ukraine stands.
And what are your feelings now about the United States and the fact that Congress has not been willing to vote for further aid to military assistance to Ukraine?
I think that's something that bothers regular Ukrainians every day, and it's not just politicians only who follow these issues closely and also they follow the future upcoming elections. Just when you go on the street, when you meet with your friends who are artists or who had nothing to do with politics, they all are discussing these issues because they understand how important the US role is. Growing up in the 90s, watching all of these hero movies when the US citizens or soldier comes and saves the world from the imminent threat, and you don't see them coming actually in real life, helping you as much as you would like to. And I'll be honest, we'd be very grateful, and I think we never could be more grateful and express our kind words to the families of those who lost their sons and daughters who came to Ukraine to defend the Ukrainian people jointly. But then in terms of the financial assistance and I think a political assistance, in the first days, each of us in 2022 feared that nobody gonna come. And we were standing there alone in the first days and feeling that people just watching and looking if we will stand long enough so we could be supported. And I think that some kind of thinking like that stopped many governments to provide us the weapons earlier. And if we would receive these weapons earlier, we would not be in this hard period of war at the moment. Because let's be honest, the what we are not going to have when all of these weapons and assistance will come is the people who could be using these weapons. Because every day we are losing our military guys on the fields. And these people we cannot get back.
Yeah, and Ukraine is not asking any NATO member to provide, soldiers.
Exactly.
You just want to be able to do it on your own, and you can't do it without ammunition, among other things. So, well, Iryna, thank you very much. I really hope that the United States changes course and gets back to supporting Ukraine much more fully than in the past. I want to thank you for your work. I know it's been a very hard, more than 2 years, especially since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, but you're doing really important work that has meaning well beyond Ukraine, because it's really a fight, for global democracy and not just a fight, between two countries. So thanks for talking.
Thank you, Francis. But I've been inspired just by my colleagues and my friends in the different institutions when we see these high anti-corruption court judges continue considering cases even on the 24th of February and not leaving their positions, where you see these young women parliamentarians who leave their children sometimes in US but still stay in Ukraine to be able to vote and pass important legislation and reforms agenda that not only international partners are asking us for, but ours civil society or our society in general. So we see these people sacrificing so much to make Ukraine a better place for everyone and to defend the world from the Russian aggression. And you can't stand behind. You just want to join them. You want to be a part of that victory. You want to be a part of that future Hollywood movie that hopefully will have also a strong US support.
Okay, well, let's hope. Thank you very much.